Nervous?
A little bit, yeah.
It's all good. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Vickery podcast. Today, I have a very good friend, Dom Coyne, on the podcast. Dom helps 9 to 5 executives take that big, scary leap into freelancing, but he also walks the walk himself. He's a freelance conference and content producer in events, which is where we worked together in the past. He's a man of many talents. He's also a foreign exchange trader with experience in retail trading and funded accounts, which I'm sure we're going to get into the podcast. So, Dom, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Connor. It's an honor to be here, especially considering all our chats and working together in the past. So, yeah, good to be here.
We've got a lot to get through, and I think a really good place to start, especially because of your expertise at the moment, helping freelancers take that leap um, from that 9 to 5, really cushy corporate job and taking the leap. Let's probably take a trip down memory lane when both of us worked for, let's not say the name of the company, but we worked for a big footsie 25, 30 corporation, big corporation, very corporate. Do you want to talk about your experience working for a big corporation?
Yeah, I guess the thing with these big corporations is it's very team dependent and it will depend on the portfolio you're in. Certainly, as you'll know, with events, you got some great events and some really bad events. And working at I'm trying my best not to name the company now. Um, Working there was really interesting. It was great to see things being done at scale, and it was great to see how a FTSE 100 company really view things. I don't know if you remember, but when people were coming up with event ideas, if they didn't think it was going to make 1 million in the first year or two, they just wouldn't bother. That was quite eye opening for me. It was they were really trying to do things big or not at all, and I learned quite a few things there, like quite a few good business principles. One of which we can get into in a bit. That was, I don't know if you remember, their ethos of copy with pride, and I've written about that and used that in the last few years, and that was great as well. And so these places can be great for building a network, for gaining good skill sets. I still now get 50% of my clients from past colleagues or past employers from other companies I worked at. This only goes so far. And if you get to a point where maybe you're becoming less inspired by the people that you're around, or they say 20% of the people often do 80% of the work, and you get into these real status games sometimes. And I certainly reached a point where I could see the future, and I could see that I would be, as I'm sure others do as well, that perhaps I could work for the next 2 decades, and only then might I get to a level of income that I was aspiring to have. And I thought, you know what, even if I did everything perfectly, I still might not get there, and I'd be a lot older and more grey than I am now. And that's what sort of inspired me to leave, really. And it's been the best decision I've ever made. So there we go.
And just to delve into, because that's what the audience that I speak to on a lot of my audience are guys in that 9 to 5, but aspire to more. They work really hard at their job, but they want to get into doing something on their own. Um, what would you say is the feeling that you had where you really went, okay, this isn't going to be fulfilling for the next 10 to 20 years?
Um, I think the best thing I always say when I think about this is I was working backwards. So I got to a point where we'd just come out of or we're coming out of the end of COVID, and people were working remotely anyway. So I was like, this isn't going to be that much of a change if I go freelance and I work for myself. And I kind of thought, what do I want to be able to say when I'm 80 and hopefully I got my family and loving people around me? What do I want to be able to say? And was it going to be that I stayed working in London in a corporate role for 2 more decades, or however many decades I was going to live for. And the answer was no. So I had to take a risk. I had some money saved up. And I do really emphasize, and I talk about this a lot in the content I put out, this isn't just flying by the seat of your pants and just quit with no plan and just give it a go. Like, there are things you can do to manage the risk and make sure you do things successfully and you succeed in taking this risk. I mean, it is a risk, but you can manage it. And we can talk about that in a minute if you like as well. But it is just what you want to be able to say in the future. And when you answer that question, it becomes very easy to know what you want to do.
And the thing about the corporate game is, as you say, there's a base level of whether you're talented or not. But then once you get a little bit more into it, a lot of it is about politics. A lot of it is about the status game rather than the actual output of your work. I mean, I don't know if you're willing to, you can just generally maybe touch upon what were the sort of politics that you ended up getting involved in while you were in that corporate game.
Well, a lot of it is sales, and I mean personal sales. Like, it's being likable. It wasn't something I ever struggled with massively, but I could see that this was going to become a more competitive game as I went on. And it was going to be less about whether you were actually good at your job, and less about meritocracy, and more about who you knew, who you were rubbing up the right way, who you were going for drinks with after work, who actually just decided that they wanted to help you out. And that's a shame. I even benefited from that initially myself in my career with a few promotions that perhaps there were other people that are better than me and that probably should have been in the managerial role, and I got it because I was able to play those games to some extent. And I'm sure you've read it as well, but that How to Win Friends and Influence People, that Dale Carnegie, it's basically everything that's in that book. If you can do that really well, you can get far, but it gets progressively harder and there's less and less opportunity and room. And it gets to a point where do you want to do that? Because it's also a case of the hours get longer. You don't necessarily get the increased remuneration. And so you do a lot of this extra hard work and these status games off the back of the hope that it will pay off. There's no guarantee in that. And I didn't really like that I wouldn't be in control of my own destiny in that way.
Well, that's a very good segue into when you did go, okay, I need to do something about this. So a lot of people watching this, they'll be in the same position. They're probably people that have a 9 to 5, but they've probably got a side hustle that might be making a little bit of money, but not enough money for them to quit their job. So and this is your specialization. This is, something that you've put a lot of content out about, you've written, you've got a newsletter about this. What are the steps in order to systematize going from a 9 to 5 with a side hustle that may or may not work to taking the leap?
Yeah. Well, I think the first perhaps surprising thing I'm going to say is you need to be realistic and self-aware. So do you have the right skills first and foremost? Are people that you're currently working with, do they think you're good at what you do? And this is assuming that either you're going to freelance and take the leap on a different skill set that you've been training on the side of your job, or you're going to take the leap and use what you're using in your day job. In both cases, you need to have proven your worth in those areas to some extent. The idea that you're just going to wing it and learn it as you go is quite frankly crazy. You want to have some degree of skill at the thing that you want to do, and ideally you have a bit of a network around that already. I would also highly recommend that you've got a good amount of savings, because when you're starting out, freelancing is quite a unique one in that you can be earning straight away, or at least within the first month, once you get your client, your first client. But with a lot of these things, it can take a lot longer. So you want to be able to cover your living expenses for at least 3 to 6 months. I mean, I'd recommend a year really, because that's going to give you the mental peace to make the correct business decisions, as opposed to trying to cash grab or take on a bad client, or make a business decision just to get the money in because you're worried about paying rent, which is not where you want to be.
So talk about your situation. You're there working for this big ugly corporation. What is your mindset where you go, okay, this is the skill I'm going to double down on, and then what was your action plan from there?
Okay. So I was, again, we were just coming out the back of COVID. I had an ex manager from another company that she'd freelanced for about a year or so, and so she'd given me a bit of an insight into what it was like and what it took. And I'd already seen, I mean, I was managing freelancers. We had freelancers working for us, and I was actually checking their invoices, and I was like, hey, how are they earning this much? And like, I'm working my ass off here doing what I'm doing, and I was doing like double, triple the amount of work that they were. Um, so I saw all that, and I thought, this has got to happen now, or it's never going to happen. And it was really because I had a good amount of savings, as I say, that I felt comfortable that I could cover myself for 6 months to a year. And I quit, and I said, you know what, I'm going to travel for a little bit because the borders had opened up again. So I did a bit of traveling in Europe. I went and did a dive master course, and started working in diving at weekends. And then I reached out to as many people as I could. I told everyone and their grandma that I was now freelancing my content production skills. And the first client I got was an old employer, through this old manager as well, that had hooked me up, and she'd helped me out a little bit and gave me that first connect. And then from there, it was just deliver that first project as well as I possibly could, and get a review, and then start marketing the hell out of what I'm doing, and just getting on LinkedIn and growing the brand. And now a lot of people reach out to me, but it was really just, I had the savings, I was willing to risk it, I wanted to do a bit of traveling, so I was planning on quitting anyway. Yeah, so I started the business in Malta, so I actually moved country and then decided to start this thing that I hadn't done before, which was, I mean, it sounds stressful, but it was exciting, man. Like, it was really exciting.
You made a really good LinkedIn post that I liked, where you said, someone earning, I think it was £150,000 in London, but you work, ridiculous hours, like 70, 80-hour weeks. All you do is just work, sleep, get up and do the same thing every day. Or you earn much less money. I think you said something like 60, 70, £80,000, but you live your lifestyle where, you live by the beach. You don't have to work endless amount of hours because of the fact you leverage your skills through freelancing. And you said you take the second one all day, every day. I said I take the first one, which is why I'm still in the corporate grind. But do you mind talking about that big shift in lifestyle, the difference between, working in London to basically living a very, very different lifestyle?
Yeah. I mean, I guess the lifestyle choice and change in that way is quite specific to my like passions and hobbies, because when I started living in different places in Europe in the past few years, it was mostly centered around scuba diving. So I was going to places where I could scuba dive at weekends, and I'd be attached to a diving school. So I was balancing my freelancing and trading with, when that wasn't happening so much, I'd be diving all weekend, sometimes 3, 4 day weekends that went on a bit long because maybe I didn't have as much work. And it was just more about enjoying life, and enjoying being in nature. And like, where I live now is one of the most gorgeous places I've ever been. And there's hiking, and there's rock climbing, and there's everything around here, and the beach 5 minutes down the road. And to come back on, that post was kind of, yeah, you could earn 150K, but how much enjoyment are you going to get? It comes back to the whole thing, like, what do you want to be able to say again? Is it, I stacked so much cash, but I never saw the world, or I never enjoyed my hobbies. And it's interesting that you bring that up again now, because I've almost created a situation where I'm working a lot again now, and I'm having to remind myself of that's not why I started it. Like, I started it to, have that 4 hour 4 hour work week book that everyone's read, or maybe not 4 hours. I'd be happy with just 3 or 4 days a week, but to actually do the things that you love doing. And the interesting point about all of this is that sometimes when you're just in the flow, like that first year I was in Cyprus and I was diving a hell of a lot, I was actually earning like a lot of money, not doing very much work. I mean, I was working hard for my clients, but the trading was going well, and I was diving a lot, and I was just enjoying life. And it was just very weird how that worked out. I was pinching myself a bit because I was used to that corporate grind and really trying to crush as many projects at once, and then suddenly I was earning more while doing less. It was a strange situation, but a good one.
Your experience is very similar to a lot of people I've spoken with in the past that are seeing the 9 to 5. I mean, the 5 day a week in the office is already dead. Um,
Yeah.
Unless you work in certain industries, finance are very keen for people to be in the office 5 days a week. But I would be very surprised if we see 5 days a week in the office come back fully. Um, but I'd push it even further in saying that the having all of your income come from a 9 to 5 is not going to be the future of things. I think, and we'll go into it a bit more, but you've got a multiple streams of income. You've got, sometimes you do teach people how to jump into freelance, but then you have the freelancing and then you have trading. Um, so on that subject, do you want to talk about how in the midst of diving and setting up the freelance business, you ended up getting into foreign exchange trading? Please talk me through that.
Okay, so that actually came a lot earlier, and that was again just wanting to always work for myself. So the first job I had out of uni was an events company, and it was financial corporate events. And I was there about 6 months, and I remember looking around and seeing people that had been there decades and looked unhappy. And what was worse is that it was a situation where both parents were often working, and they were doing this to pay for insane, nursery, school fees, whatever, working their asses off, and they were having 1 week, maybe 2 weeks holiday a year to actually enjoy life. And this kind of builds into the drinking culture in London and everything, because there's a bit of escapism there. But I remember just thinking, this is not for me. So I was looking for a way out straight away the minute that I started. But trading is hard. Like, it's taken a long time for me to earn any significant profits. And I've still got a long way to go, and there's still a lot to learn in that space. So that I built that skill along with my events career. And funnily enough, I thought trading was the thing that I was going to escape with, but it was actually the skills I learnt in events that allowed me to do that, which then facilitated my trading. So, yeah, that began a good friend of mine. He was working at an energy company on a trading desk, and he sent me a video, and that kicked everything off. But for anyone that is interested in trading, watching this, it's one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it is the best thing for understanding yourself and for understanding your own personality, because there's nowhere to hide. Your results are solely what you do. It's not, was the marketing team good this year, or did the sales guys do their job? It's, your results are you. And when you become that self introspective, it starts to affect every other area of your life. As I'm sure when you start to try and improve yourself, if you start going to the gym, you think once you get some success in that, you wonder how that could apply to maybe your relationships or your work or anything else that you want. So that was really the catalyst to kick all this stuff off.
So I think that's something I've been trying to learn trading since you brought it up to me, and I find it difficult to understand so much data being thrown at you, especially with Forex, foreign exchange trading. Do you
Mm.
want to talk about why foreign exchange trading and how you make those beginner gains of just wrapping your head around the basics?
Sure. So I was quite lucky. So the same friend that sent me that video, he'd bought someone's trading course, some basic trading course. And although that wasn't like the be all end all and holy grail, because there is no holy grail, it was a real good basic education in risk management. So a lot of traders, when they first start out, you'll hear that they blow up multiple accounts. I've never blown an account. I might have lost a funded one due to risk parameters, but I've never blown an actual personal account. And that was purely just because the teaching of how to manage your risk was uh, basic, but really good principles. So I've never risked more than 1% on any trade. You always use a stop loss. You always know what the max you could lose is. And you put all these systems in place that mean that, again, just like with the risk management, with deciding to quit your job and freelance or do a new entrepreneurial venture, you have to assess the lay of the land and say, I want to take this risk, but let's really be sensible about how I do it. Let's make sure I succeed with it. So I took a couple courses, I got into some communities, and over the years, I mean, I'd say really I was only truly taking it seriously in the last 3 years. I mean, I thought I was taking it seriously at the start, but there's just more and more levels to it. And yeah, I started trading money for prop firms, and I'd had varying success with them in the last few years. But now I'm slowly scaling more capital and learning to deal with looking at the bigger numbers. And it's been an interesting journey. To reply better on your question, when you start out, you will get thrown a lot of strategies, a lot of potential currency options or financial assets to look at. But I went from looking at 28 currency pairs when I started across multiple time frames to now I only look at one currency pair. I only trade one time frame. So that whole like keep it simple, stupid. If you've come across that KISS, an acronym, uh, quite often it's the simple things that work the best. And really, all this time, as with most things, you're just battling yourself rather than what you actually think you're battling.
I love that. So, what are the common problems? You don't need to get too personal, but what are the common problems that you've seen in mindset when you are battling yourself? And it sounds like it's not just to do with trading. It sounds like maybe it's just life lessons. What are those common battles that you're having to fight?
It's doing the right thing that you know that you should be doing. To give a really good example, so say you're on a bit of a health kick, you want to get fitter, you want to have that good summer fitness body, or you just want to be physically fitter. You know that you should work out several times a week. You know that you shouldn't be eating chocolate bars every day. It's just making those right decisions. I know that if I don't get up at 6 or 7 a.m. every morning to like assess the charts or keep an eye on things, then I won't be prepared for the day, right? And so it was going through that battle of, at least in the first few years, of should I be out drinking at the weekend, or should I prioritize my sleep on a Sunday evening? Should I be going out during the week? Probably not. Should I be hanging around people that are a bad influence that maybe will affect your mentality on these things, will affect your habits? And once you start saying no to more stuff and start applying the correct habits and being more disciplined, like in this case, daily life, then you do start to see the results. It's not, you see a lot of these posts on Instagram about discipline, but it's not bullshit. It is true. And that's what I mean about the battle with yourself. most people aren't stupid. Like, they know the right answer, they know what they should be doing, and quite often it'll be their own daily choices that are holding them back. And it's very easy to avoid that and blame your circumstances or blame the business or the thing that you're doing, but quite often it's is what you're doing. And once I started to take 100% accountability, things started to change. And look, I'm not always up at 6 a.m. every day. I don't get it right every day. But so long as you're course correcting and you're not so harsh on yourself that you hate yourself when you don't do it, but you do notice and you're self-aware enough to say, hey, I can do better.
And that leads on to, you've been creating a lot of content on freelancing, how to get set up, and you've also released a course and worked with a few people. Do you mind talking about what are the patterns that you see over and over again for those people that want to set up themselves as a freelancer, but those patterns that either could be mental or it could be, physically they haven't got any money saved, for example. What are the patterns that you notice for people that are struggling to break out into freelancing?
I don't think I don't think necessarily breaking out into freelancing is something that will be so challenging for someone. Trading, on the other hand, is a total different kettle of fish. But freelancing, I think, provided that you're known for what you're doing, and you, as we've talked about, you have a decent network, you've built this skill set. I don't think it's something that's out of reach for most people. So long as you're self-sufficient and you have a decent level of discipline, and you're not someone that needs your boss like over your shoulder managing everything you do, I think it's something that most people can and would succeed at if they tried. And we haven't spoke about it yet, but you did mention that this is where you see things changing and the 4-day work week ending. There's a really interesting guy called Naval Ravigant, and he has a theory that businesses are just going to get smaller in the future because we're all going to end up working independently for ourselves. And this is a trend that's growing. If you look at any statistics that are coming out at the moment, that we will just be exchanging goods and services with each other through businesses and through online platforms remotely. And this will only continue to happen. And most people that have gone through my course or that have looked at any of the content and shown interest in it, so long as they're considering the risks properly and they've properly assessed their situation, if they tick most of those boxes, it's not going to be difficult for them. It really just comes down to taking that leap. I think for most people, really, the thing that holds them back is their fear of succeeding. And in actual fact, most of them could access this quite without too much trouble, really. It's just their own minds that will prevent them from doing it.
I've spoken to a few people that have made that shift from 9 to 5 into doing their own thing. And one of the fears people have is that they're worried that if someone isn't there to almost threaten them, you just said your boss hanging over your shoulder, then they're not going to have the motivation to get up at 6 or 7 in order to do things. But I always say back to you, well, then how are you going to pay for the bills? How are you going to live? So is that what you've noticed from people that have had success from that you've been working with them, that they go from needing a boss to the motivation is there just having to make the bills?
Well, there's an error in that thinking because a lot of people see the corporate salaried lifestyle as comfortable and secure. But if there's anything that we've learned in the last few years, and I really urge people to change their thoughts on this and look at building other streams of income. If there's anything we've learned, it's that when the chips are down and companies' profits are going through the floor, they will not hesitate to get rid of this family culture that they always talk about. And they will cut you like it's nothing. And we saw it where we worked. We saw this happen. And this idea that you're going to be safe on a salary is just insane. So really, the risk is staying doing what you're doing and trying to live your lifestyle based on someone paying you this income for this particular salary job for the rest of your life. That's the real risk. And it's an inability to properly assess risk that people stay what they're doing. Whereas once you start working for yourself, it's all on you, yes, and you do have to be disciplined with what you're doing, but you can generate other income streams, you can develop different businesses, and then you're no longer relying on someone else, and there is no ceiling on your income then. You're not waiting for that yearly review for people to tell you you're a good boy and you've done a good job. It's you decide how and when you get paid, and if you want to work harder, you will see the benefits of that. And that is there's a real meritocracy when you start working for yourself, because it's your efforts. You're not relying on other people. And that's the real win, really, when you begin.
And so now you've taken responsibility for your own income in that sense. One of the things I've noticed you've really been, and this can get into some of the stuff I've been doing recently as well. One of the things I've really noticed you've doubled down on is personal brand. Did that come from a point when you were like, I'm not making enough money here, I need to make more? Was it that, or is it more out of a place of curiosity that you're really doubling down on a personal brand?
I'll tell you what it is, and this might, and stop me if this goes too in depth, but I really started to learn about leverage. And by that, I mean leverage in terms of your finances, in terms of people, in terms of using AI, in terms of automation, in terms of using social media. And if you're still working in a salary job, you're not using leverage, you're selling your time. Now, freelancing is you're still selling your time, but at least you're in control of your time. And if you want to build out that business after and hire other people and turn it into an agency, you can do that. And you do have the additional leverage of the fact that you own the business that you're working in. So that's a form of leverage. Social media, also a form of leverage. It's never been possible in history before for us to reach so many people on the planet at one time just with one video. And if you can get people to buy into your brand, it's a very powerful thing to have. And I see it becoming more of a thing in the future that if you don't have a social brand online, you're going to find it a lot harder just to get a basic job, or a lot harder to do anything, because people are going to wonder who you are. Like, gone are the days where it's just a charismatic person on the sales floor or in the office that can get deals done and everyone loves and they know globally because he visits different offices. This sort of interaction is being done at scale through video on someone's phone. And I saw that and I thought it'd be a shame not to get in on that, because the potential benefit of in the future is well worth it. And I think it's similar with using AI, that if you're not getting in on the trend, you're going to get left behind. Because if you're not using social media, I wouldn't get half the clients that I get now. If I didn't have a social media presence, I wouldn't be able to freelance. Even with AI, another form of leverage, I'm now cutting down the days that I work on certain tasks because I can use AI to do it. And the freelancers that aren't using it, they're not going to be able to keep up. They won't be able to do projects as quickly. They won't be able to impress the client as much because the content won't be as good or well delivered. And it's just using the tools at your disposal. And that's really why I've started to push on that. I mean, it's still is an early game, and these things take a lot of time. But, in 3 to 5 years, maybe I'll have a decent following and then I can see what we can do with that. So it's just another, again, with like income streams, it's like placing bets. So, I'm not relying on the one salary. I'm placing a bet on my freelancing. That's paying the majority of the bills. I place bets when I take trades. That's also, another potential payout in the future. And I place bets on growing a social media. And I really want to, in the future, get to a point where I'm only working on things that have leverage. And there's many ways to do that, but it's really, I think, the best way to grow wealth and to grow the life that you want.
And that, yeah, just to chip in my point on it, when I worked for the corporation we worked at, I had a side hustle going on at the same time. I had a publishing business, and the publishing business always made a profit. It always made a profit, but not quite enough for me ever to quit my cushy corporate sales job. And corporate sales is slightly different because you're not sat there at the review asking for a pay rise. If you do put in double the amount of work, you can earn a lot more money than someone that doesn't put in the same amount of
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
But um, I completely get your point on leverage. So what we were talking before this recording started about what I'm doing on, I mean, I'd say on LinkedIn and on, yeah, I've got two different platforms that I'm trying to build a personal brand on. On LinkedIn, I completely agree with you. I wouldn't get half the opportunities I get if I did. I think I've got like 13,500 followers on LinkedIn. I've really doubled down on creating good LinkedIn content, um, learning about video production. You know, this is a DJI mic, which I can hook up to my phone. I can do videos at trade shows. I can do candid videos, which I then produce on LinkedIn. Learning about production, learning about marketing has helped me on LinkedIn. Whereas on Instagram, I have a totally different strategy, which is about working with fashion models, and that's to do with a different brand I'm trying to go for. But you ask the question, you know, why am I doing that? And they're both linked on the same thing, and it ties back to this publishing company. I'm really good at sales because that's my job. I'm really good at interpersonal selling, but I'm really bad at marketing. And that I realized that is why my publishing company ultimately failed. It never went bust. It just kind of plodded along. And I really took a moment. I thought, what skills have I not got that is meaning that this company is not growing? And I have not got the marketing chops. I flat out do not have the sales copy chops. I don't know enough about production. I don't know enough about social media marketing strategy. I'm not taking the right steps in order to leverage, which is exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So all of the things I'm doing is learning the skills, learning about production, learning about marketing, learning how to get myself out there. I mean, you're also leveraging the skills of sales copy. So that's something that I'm trying to learn at the moment. So I don't know if that inspires or something
Yeah.
that you're trying to do as well.
No, it's a really interesting point, and this sort of builds on why, I mean, I would advise anyone that has any entrepreneurial ideas for what they want to be in the future to really just start a business straight away. And it could be a side hustle, and it could be something that, I mean, I started a business at uni that didn't last past a couple of years. It was an events business. But it's by actually doing it, you're learning what you're missing, you know, and the skills that you don't have. And certainly, I've also experienced this with online videos and creating content online. You know, I had to hire someone, she actually worked with us, that was helping me with some of the marketing because she'd worked in marketing for years. And I said, hey, I've never done marketing in my life. I've been around marketing teams, but I actually don't know that much about marketing. I need to learn this skill of someone else. And it's really having that self-awareness that you are forced to confront when you start a business to say, hey, what is my weakness? You know, what other stuff do I need to learn? And that's the most exciting thing about all of it, because then you can build, and then, you know, in a few years you might start knowing nothing, but then suddenly your videos get a bit better, maybe your email copy gets a bit better, you know, maybe I get a bit better at sales. We don't know, you know, and it's really reaching the full potential, and you can't do that when you're pigeonholed in, you know, one role. So I really commend anyone that's doing any sort of side hustle, because they're really just testing and learning other skills in other areas. And you know, we keep doing that long enough, we end up talking together on a video about these topics that maybe we would have never spoken about before. And the other thing as well is, I don't know if you remember, but we there was a drinks that we had at our old company. It was like a social drinks or something, and we were talking about our side hustles at the time. And mine was trading, and yours was your publishing company. And I remember I was a bit, do you remember this? And I was a bit guarded to talk about these things because I'd experienced at other companies that when you start telling people what other plans you have and what other things you're doing, you're almost challenging their reality. And so I was quite guarded about these other projects that I had because people don't like that you have other ideas. They want to know that you're doing the same stuff that they're doing and that you're in the same shit that they're in. And so, this is another barrier that people have when they want to leave and when they want to try new things is often the people around them don't have the same mindset. And I'm sure you'll have experienced it, but when you do start trying these other side hustles and these other avenues, you meet more people doing the same thing and you can bounce off each other and they help you with some of your business and they share ideas. And then, suddenly now the majority of my friends are all entrepreneurs that have their own business. And that wasn't the case, 4 years ago. So your environment is really, really important as well. And that's something that you only get out of if you decide you want to get out of it.
Yeah, and I think that point about finding your tribe is very important if you work in that 9 to 5. The first thing I notice is that the young guns coming up, the reason I like your content is that it's very measured. Because actually, if you listen to a lot of let's say self-help gurus, if you kind of look at all that advice, a lot of them go, you don't need an expertise, just quit your job and go for it. And if you have a skill like you have, that's good advice. But if you're 18, I don't think that's very good advice. So
Yeah.
I think your advice of, and this is something that my last podcast guest said as well, you need to leverage you basically get paid by a corporation to learn
Yeah.
really useful skills.
Yeah.
Unless you are seriously talented, or you have a unique selling point, or you have some sort of advantage, whether that could be a network or whether that could be some sort of knowledge that someone else doesn't have, you really ain't got much. If you think you can, if you're 18 and you can come up with a business idea that no one else has come up with and leverage that, good on you. But if you want my advice, I think you have a bit more of a sober message, which is, leverage a network, plan your escape, have some savings, and then go for it. So
Yeah.
do you ever find that you come up against sort of advice that you directly disagree with?
Yeah, most of the stuff online is complete bollocks. It's telling people, especially these trading courses, it's telling people that they're going to quit their job and be a millionaire in 6 months. And it's just lies. And a lot of these online courses do the same thing. And that was something that I really tried to like, all right, there might be a sales tagline in there, but I'm really trying to be very realistic. And that's purely because this was a realism that I had to confront myself because I had lofty aspirations as well. And this is how these social media posts get you because a lot of people have a very far removed idea of where they want to be and where they actually are. And the minute when you properly assess that is the minute that you're forced to take action and you're forced to just go, fuck, I'm just going to try it and see what happens. Because if you're self-aware enough to know that, like we were saying in the start of this chat, that I'm never going to earn 6 figures in what I was doing now, in the events job that I was in for another few decades, and that's if everything goes well, then something needs to change. And in that case, it was learning new skills and developing myself and looking for different environments. And this environment point is another interesting piece because once you do become self-aware and you do start to work backwards from what you want to be able to say, you start to think about the lifestyle that you want and where you want to be. And that tied in very nicely for me for remote working and being a freelancer, because I thought, I don't want to live in London. I want to live abroad and explore different places. And another thing that really, I don't know if you have any ideas on this as well, but was really thinking about this. There's a book called Nomad Capitalist, and he has a slogan called "Go where you're treated best." Right? I don't know if you've read it, but I've realized I can apply this to anything in life. So, it's better to hang out with people that really like you and that see the best in you and want the best for you, people that treat you the best. It's good to live in a place where, it's not such high expenses and you have a good standard and good value of living. It's also good to live in a place where maybe the tax is not crazy. It's good to live in a place where there's good healthcare, where there's good schooling. And the idea that you would get all of these things perfect in the place where you're born is, is crazy. So once I started to look and think about, well, where do I want to be for this thing? Or where do I want to be for that thing? Or where would I like to be in the future that would achieve some of these aims? That's just another reason to, reassess and rethink and maybe take that leap for anyone that's thinking about going freelance or starting a business.
I love Nomad Capitalist. I'm kind of obsessed with his videos. But I obviously live in London, and the way I sell it to myself, and a lot of what my content is about, is if you live in London and you are not milking everything out of things you can only get in London,
Yeah.
the fashion industry, the top end VIP Mayfair lifestyle, those clubs. If you're not networking with, celebrities or the social, sort of what do you call it? Socialites of London. If you're not leveraging that, then what's the point of living in London? Go live anywhere else. Or if there's certain things of another, for example, I used to live in Vegas. When I lived in Vegas, if you're not going to the best nightclubs in the world, if you're not taking advantage of the great networking opportunities, the celebrities in Vegas, you walk down the hallways of Encore at the Wynn, and Taylor Swift will be walking the other way, or Shaquille O'Neal will be walking the other way. And if you're not in those places, why are you living in Vegas? So I think you probably from some of your content, London, and you can talk. I'd be interested to hear your opinion on this. London doesn't seem to be your favorite place in the world. Do you want to expand
Hey,
on that?
London will always be my home, and it'll always be close to my heart and my family, and a lot of my closest friends are there. And I love coming back to visit.
There's a butt coming though, isn't there?
There is, there's more good things first, the restaurants, the bars, the nightlife, the rooftop bars, some of my favorite. I love visiting them. Going to the theater, all these nice things that you can only get in a major capital city. And I love being there and visiting for that. But I also love leaving again. And the reason for that is just because for me personally, it's too busy. I I was born and bred in London. I'd been there nearly 30 years. And I've done city life, now I'm in a calm and peaceful, you can't hear cars here. All I can hear is crickets and birds in the morning, and I can hear the sea coming over the hill, and I love it. And for me, I talk about this a lot with my friends because there is a real trade-off. You do leave people you love behind. But for me, to work as hard as I do on the business that I have, to do that in a high stress environment like London would have been 10 times harder for me. But if I'm surrounded by peacefulness and, I can have my activities, I can go scuba diving at the weekend, which I do regularly. I couldn't do that in the Thames. I couldn't go rock climbing very easily. I couldn't go surfing. And it was really just choosing a lifestyle that I wanted. London is a great place if you love being in the city. And I just decided that wasn't for me anymore. But I fully appreciate that I agree with you. If you're there for those things, then, go nuts, enjoy it. There's an abundance of those elements. But now I just make do with, going to Lisbon a couple of days a week, and that's, 500,000 people, and that's okay with me.
I like that. So before we wrap up, I think a really good final point, because there'll be a lot of people watching this who'll be in the same position as you and me, where they want to go where they're treated best. But do you want to talk a little bit about that move and the trade-off between London and then going to Portugal?
Yeah, yeah. Um, so I guess, I mean, when I was planning my escape, should we say, every holiday I was doing was a diving holiday. And every location that I've chosen in the last few years, it had to have scuba diving. But it also, I made a list before I left. And I was like, I want to be able to live under this amount of income per month. I want to be able to do these activities. And I want to have, these sorts of gyms, or be close to a beach, or have these options available. And when I started to look for those places, this nothing on this list was possible in London.
Mm,
Nothing that I decided that I wanted was possible in London, and so I had to leave. And especially with starting a business, if we're coming back to like reducing risk, you want to do it low cost. I didn't want to still be, paying a lot for rent when, if I was still there now, I wouldn't be able to have the lifestyle that I have. Because things are a lot cheaper over here. I'm benefiting from the arbitrage of, being paid from my business in London, basically London wages, or similar to, but I'm living somewhere much cheaper. And that was also a big factor for me. It was, just being smart about the lifestyle that I wanted and how I would finance it, and then, trying to, yeah, I just wouldn't be able to have what I have here. And it would have been a lot of stress and many years striving to not get that staying in London, I think.
I like that. Okay, well, is there anything else you want to sort of raise before we jump off? I know that you've got about 5 different avenues you could go down, and a couple that I didn't even realize you're clearly into the sort of self-help stuff as well as I am. So, is there anything else that you sort of burning that you've been thinking over the last couple of months that you want to tell your audience?
I think, well, I was thinking about what message would be worthwhile sharing during our chat. And I remember, and this is for, since your audience are predominantly people that are thinking about making a change, I just want to build on that point a little more. And that is this simple phrase, and that is that everything is perfect, divine, and right on time. And by that, I mean, when you're thinking about making this change, there are people that are going to challenge your decision, question what you're doing. And in some cases, like I had, they're going to be saying, you're a bit old to go traveling, or, why are you thinking about starting this business now? Or, why are you thinking about becoming a professional scuba diver now? Shouldn't you be doing that when you're young? Just fuck them people, right? You just need to do what you need to do. Because if you live your life based on, other people's expectations of you, you're always going to end up with regret. So if there's anyone that's watching this that is thinking, I've just got this feeling, I need to scratch that itch, then you just got to go do it. And if you take the right precautions, you're not going to blow up your life. You can do these things in a smart way. And if it doesn't work out and you decide that it's not for you, like some people do try freelancing and they actually decide that they like being in a corporate environment and being around a team all the time, you can always come back to it. It's not going anywhere. There's always going to be other jobs. So yeah, just get on with it. If you've got that itch, stop messing around and, test yourself, see where you get to, because you might be surprised where you end up, and you might actually be very happy with where you end up.
There we go. I think that's a great place to end. Look, Dom, I really appreciate your time. Where can everyone find you if they want to explore more?
Yeah, they can follow me on LinkedIn. It's probably where I talk the most rubbish, but that's a good place to find out more about freelancing and trading. There's also a YouTube channel which is fairly new, so I recommend they check that out. Most can be found just under the name Dom Coyne or Dom Marcus Coyne. And yeah, follow the content. If you like it, subscribe. And I'm posting content regularly all the time, so happy to interact with anyone that's got any questions as well.
How can they sign up to the newsletter?
Yes, so that is a Substack. So I guess we can leave something in the comments on this video. So I'll do that when you post it. And that's just where I talk about everything from personal development to freelancing to trading. And it's a weekly newsletter that I post every week just with my thoughts. It's become a bit of a journal, but I'm also sharing all my mistakes and lessons over the last 3 years, so you guys don't have to make those mistakes, and you can learn from my lessons. So
Nice. Well, I'd recommend everyone to sign up to the newsletter. I've found it very helpful. So yeah, Dom, thanks very much.
great, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and yeah, I'm glad you found the newsletter useful, and yeah, it's been an honor to do this with you, mate.
No worries. I'm sure we'll do it another time.
All right, cheers, Connor.